Well, we saw some new faces in an LSU uniform against Grambling on Saturday night, and some we understand that they are backups or maybe low on the depth chart, and that was their opportunity to see the field and to get some valuable in game experience. But are some of them possibly here to stay?
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, thank you for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Plus, do not forget, you can also check us out on YouTube as well. Just search the name of the podcast, Locked On LSU, hit that subscribe button, and you'll get notified as soon as Locked On LSU drops. My name is Caroline Fenton, and I am your host, as I am every day. You can follow me on Twitter at CarolineFenton1. And also, just a reminder, we do a mailbag every Wednesday. So feel free to send in those questions. You can send them out on Twitter. My Twitter handle is below if you're watching it on YouTube, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can just comment below. So we'll get to your questions on a mailbag Wednesday tomorrow. And starting tomorrow, I want to pivot toward Mississippi State. Starting conference play, big SEC West swing game. And in my opinion, I think this is a big benchmark game to see where LSU really is. You beat Mississippi State, then great, you're 1-0 in conference play, you're 2-1 in the season, and bring on Arkansas in week 4. You drop a game to Mississippi State, and then we're going to have serious questions about what this team can be, who this team truly is. So we're going to start pivoting toward Mississippi State, players to watch, matchups to watch. This Mississippi State team is a completely different look this year offensively than maybe it was under the late, great Mike Leach. So we'll get into all the Mississippi State tea and everything that you need to know on tomorrow's podcast and the rest of the week. But today, I want to look back again because we saw some new faces, and that was probably to be expected. Against Grambling, to be expected that you see some guys maybe lower on the depth chart, maybe some true freshmen get some snaps, whether it's a half, whether it's a quarter, whether it's a handful of plays here and there. It was to be expected that at some point you let your backups loose, you let them get some valuable in-game experience, and then you move on from there. But there were some new faces, maybe new to us or new in an LSU uniform, that could very well be here to stay. And I want to start with one that I was incredibly pleasantly surprised to see was available, and not just available, but starting for LSU on Saturday night. And that was Denver Harris. Denver Harris, if you have not been aware, has had a really rocky go at it, really since the beginning of his college football career, dating back to Texas A&M, when he was suspended for a game for violating team rules and then suspended indefinitely for the rest of the season. Last year, he transfers to LSU, gets a fresh start. It's been a tough sledding. And Denver Harris gets to LSU, and things haven't necessarily been a cakewalk for him. Whether that's self-induced or not, I don't know the details as to what's going on. But Denver Harris comes in, and he's not taking first-team reps in spring practice and in fall camp, taking second-team reps. And then we start to see Denver Harris take more and more third-team reps, maybe taking more reps with true freshmen, taking reps with the backups. And Denver Harris was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. He was one of the highest-rated players in the transfer portal. I mean, I've said this before and I'll say it again. It's a testament to Denver Harris's true, just natural talent and abilities that his second chance is at LSU. Like, most kids don't even get their first chances at LSU. And Denver Harris has so much just ability and talent that he's made his way to LSU for his second chance. That's how good of a player he is. So you can assume that it was a little bit out of the ordinary to us, a little bit frustrating to him, I'm sure, that he wasn't getting first team reps. He wasn't getting first team looks. And look, that could be for a couple of reasons. One, maybe he just wasn't executing at a high enough level to be taking first team reps. Two, the coaching staff may have wanted him to work for his first team reps, to work for game time, in game playing time. And I don't blame them for doing that if that was the case. To, basically incentivize game time for good behavior. And maybe it was both, maybe it was neither, maybe it was one or the other. The fact of the matter is, Denver Harris has not been readily available consistently since he got to LSU. Like Brian Kelly said, he was away from the team. He didn't make the trip to Florida State. And now here he is in week 2, and he's starting a game against Grambling. Now, gave up, he was one-on-one with that receiver who scored that first touchdown for Grambling on their first drive. He had a nice little pass breakup in the end zone, so gave up a touchdown, but also saved what probably would have been a touchdown had he not deflected that pass. So a little bit of good, a little bit of bad from Denver Harris, but also let's keep in mind he doesn't have an immense amount of in-game experience. He saw very little work at Texas A&M just simply because he was suspended for essentially half, if not over half, of the season last year. So he's going to go through those growing pains. 0 tackles on the night, 0 interceptions on the night, but had that pass breakup and the limited work that he saw. Overall, I see a couple of good things here. The first is LSU, if he can stay available, then LSU now has more depth and more talent in the secondary. And through 2 weeks, I think we see that that is paramount for this LSU team. To not just to have, good players, because yeah, you need that, but also to just have bodies, to just have able bodies to be able to play the cornerback position. So he steps in for Sage Ryan, the starting cornerback spot on Saturday. So that's a positive thing. You get some depth in the secondary. The second thing, I think it's overall just a positive thing for Denver Harris, because Brian Kelly talked about how he needed to buy in to our message, that he needed to be completely bought into what we want for him and what the expectations are for this team. And that frankly, he just wasn't there yet. This move where Denver Harris started on Saturday, I think is a wonderful testament to the work that both he and his coaching staff has been putting in behind the scenes to make sure that he is ready and he is buying into this message. And look, I have to give Brian Kelly and his coaching staff a whole lot of credit, because a player who can play at the level that Denver Harris can play, not playing in a position group where you need talent and depth the most, simply because you want to make sure that every single player in that locker room is bought into the bottom line, I think it's admirable. And I think that's a sign of a good coach that wants to foster a positive environment. So overall, good things. Good things from Denver Harris and whatever he was dealing with the personal matters that Brian Kelly brought up, that the rationale for Denver Harris being away from the team, or the buying in that maybe wasn't happening that's happening now. It's a positive thing for the secondary. It's a positive thing for the depth in the defensive back room. And it's a positive thing, frankly, for Denver Harris to finally be seeing, some positive momentum and really, a return on his investment into this team. But coming up next, I want to transition to the offensive side of the ball, because we saw a couple offensive players for the first time in an LSU uniform, and man, oh man, did it make me excited. We will break it all down coming up next. Buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. But for some reason, it always ends up being stressful. Whether it's waiting in the long virtual lines, maybe on some other third party ticket sites, or maybe it's the high prices for tickets that are in incredibly high demand, whether it be for a concert or a sporting event or whatever it might be. I feel like my ticket buying experiences have been more stressful than they've not been stressful. And I'm tired of it. I am tired of it. That's why I've turned to Game Time. Game Time is the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for all of your sporting events, music events, comedy shows, theater events that might be around near you. They've got killer deals on last minute tickets and their best price guarantee. So you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun that you will have. So I am someone, I procrastinate, all right? I will wait until the very last second to get some stuff done. And that's on me. And I'm probably not going to change. And I'm probably going to pay the price for it. But Game Time actually really helps me out because they've got flash deals on last minute tickets. So let's say you and some friends decide at the last minute, maybe you want to go to your local NFL game on Sunday. Maybe you want to go to a concert going down this weekend and you decide like last minute and it's kind of an on the whim decision. Well, check out Game Time because Game Time is going to have those last minute tickets and those last minute deals to get you where you want to go. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. So get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. Plus, you'll buy your tickets in only a matter of seconds. 2 taps and you're set. No more going through the ringer with some third party ticket sites and it's confusing and you got to work against the clock. It's hard, it's a lot. So go get tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On College, all one word, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Well, thanks again for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. Hey, college football season is here. And this season, Locked On is kicking up our coverage with Locked On College Football Kickoff. Live each Friday, Locked On will go live from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On College YouTube channel. College Football Kickoff Live will cover playoff implications, the conference rivalry games, and go in depth like only we can, like only Locked On can, including insight and analysis from our stable of Locked On College hosts covering their team every single day. So find Locked On College Football Kickoff live every Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on any Locked On College YouTube channel. You can find it on the Locked On LSU YouTube channel. Again, that's every Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. to noon Central if you're local in Baton Rouge. You do not want to miss this. All right, let's get into it because we saw some new faces. We saw a few players getting their either first starts with LSU or maybe the first few snaps in an LSU uniform. Mentioned Denver Harris. I think that's a positive sign for him and his development both on the field and behavior off the field. But moving offensively, this is a guy that I simply don't think that I can talk about enough because I got so excited and encouraged watching him on Saturday. Now, again, I understand it was against Grambling. I understand that you're going to run into much more difficult defensive fronts throughout the rest of the schedule. I mean, you got one coming up on Saturday against Mississippi State. But from what I saw, I liked, and it was Logan Diggs. I mean, he absolutely splashed in his first game in an LSU uniform. Now, remember, Logan Diggs transferred from Notre Dame. He played for Brian Kelly for a couple of years at Notre Dame. And he was getting buried on the depth chart at Notre Dame, transfers to LSU. And I think that we saw on full display, we got a peek of one thing that he's really good at. And I think we got a full display of another. And what I mean by that is Logan Diggs, from everything that I've watched of him at Notre Dame, everything I've heard of him at Notre Dame, is that he is just as good catching balls out of the backfield than he is just bullying it up on the line of scrimmage and being a bruiser, being a big bodied, quick guy. Logan Diggs had 15 rushes for 115 yards, a touchdown, and then added on one reception for 18 yards on top of that. So that was a little flash of what he can do in the passing game. I don't know how this coaching staff wants to use Logan Diggs. Is he going to be just like your go-to workhorse running back? I wouldn't be surprised for that to be the case. LSU traditionally is that kind of team. I know this is a different coaching staff, but if you look at, coaching, or excuse me, of LSU teams of the past, even across different coaching staffs, LSU always has that one go-to workhorse bully running back. Logan Diggs very much so could be that. Do they want to emphasize his threat in the passing game? That absolutely is at your disposal as well. Now, Brian Kelly was asked about that, how he wants to use the running backs, and he said, hey, we want to continue to be versatile and we want to continue to be balanced. And we want to be, in lesser words than he used, essentially a running back by committee by emphasizing the individual talents of the stable of running backs that LSU has on this roster. So I don't know what Logan Diggs' role is going to be on this offense moving forward, but I liked what I saw and I want to see more of it. Again, I understand the opponent. I understand that I'm keeping that in mind and not getting ahead of myself here. But I said it last week. Jaden Daniels can't be your leading rusher every game. He simply just can't do it. It's not sustainable. He's going to get himself killed. And then you're really screwed when you're without your starting quarterback. So that's what Logan Diggs did on Saturday was he took some of the run game pressure off of Jaden Daniels, and Logan Diggs was your leading rusher on the day, not Jaden Daniels. Thank goodness. Hallelujah. So I'm encouraged to see the evolution of this run game after not the best showing against Florida State. Excited to see what they're able to do against Mississippi State. And I'm excited to see Logan Diggs and how this coaching staff carves out a role for him because I just absolutely love what I saw from him on Saturday night. The other one I wanted to mention in the same position group is Caleb Jackson. We got to see a little bit of Caleb Jackson on Saturday night as well, but Brian Kelly was asked about what he saw. This was Brian Kelly on Caleb Jackson, the true freshman running back, 4-star recruit out of Baton Rouge.
Getting into Caleb a little bit, does that position allow a freshman to maybe have an impact quicker than maybe a different position? And what do you see in him and his usage going forward?
Well, I think with both backs, it was a physicality. You know, there was runs after contact. There was, that physical presence that we were looking for. But obviously, look, no disrespect to our opponent, but it was not an SEC opponent. And so we were able to control the line of scrimmage and do it with regularity. So I think we'd be standing here with a whole different feeling if we weren't able to control the line of scrimmage. So I think we just, we were more diversified in our running game. As you saw, we ran, probably 4 or 5 different schemes up front. But the goal here was to get off the ball, and that's what we did. We got off the ball. We ran hard. We featured 2 new backs that we hadn't seen, and we liked the results. Now let's move forward with that.
So here's what I take away from that. Now, I like to pride myself on starting to become fluent in coach speak. And every coach speak is different. Now, Brian Kelly tends to leave a good bit on the table now. Like, he's a pretty easy book to read. But let me dissect and translate some of that Brian Kelly ease, if you will. Doesn't sound like Caleb Jackson is going to be used or highlighted as much moving forward as he was on Saturday night against Grambling. Now, that might simply just be an experience and seniority thing. Just the way that he said that of, look, like, keep our opponent in mind. Yeah, we wanted to be explosive, and that's what we were able to do. But moving forward, I mean, like, in my opinion, you just have to put the guy out there that gives you the best chance to win. If Caleb Jackson in his youth and his lack of experience at this level is not going to give you the best chance to win, then go with your more experienced backs. But I liked what I saw from Caleb Jackson on Saturday. I've liked what I've seen from Caleb Jackson all off season long. 11 carries for 62 yards, 2 touchdowns on the night. Solid day for a player that got some in-game experience in a game that you were, that you had already won by halftime. So, quality experience for him. And can he leverage that into more playing time in the future? I think you'll see a lot more of Logan Diggs. Caleb Jackson, I think that you're not going to see him as much just based off of what Brian Kelly had to say there. But final player that I loved to see on Saturday night against Grambling. We'll get into that coming up next. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. So now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can bet on everything from the spreads to player props and more. So visit fanduel.com/locked on and kick off the NFL season with an offer that you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Well, thanks again for making Locked In LSU your first listen every single day. Every day is coming up tomorrow on the podcast. Let's do a little around the SEC because the SEC feels way more wide open this season than it has maybe in a really, really long time. So we'll do it around the SEC, what this past week slate of games means for LSU, what this upcoming week slate of games means for LSU, and of course, your questions. It's a mailbag Wednesday, so get those questions in. You can send them in at Caroline Fenton 1, or if you're watching on the YouTube page, you can just comment those questions down below. So that's coming up on tomorrow's edition of Locked On LSU. But we got to see some players in an LSU uniform for the first time, getting snaps for the first time. Denver Harris, Logan Diggs, Caleb Jackson. I think it's all encouraging things, more specifically Logan Diggs. Like LSU, I think LSU just found their new go-to back. And man, after seeing the run game against Florida State, that warms my sweet little purple and gold heart. That LSU, a program that is perennial running backs, could have found their guy. The final one, and this may have slipped under the radar a little bit. Lance Hurd. So Lance Hurd came in the second series. And so Lance Hurd, just to kind of, jog everyone's memory, Lance Hurd is a 5-star recruit out of Neville in Monroe. So Lance Hurd, Will Campbell, high school teammates on both ends of the offensive line. So LSU just got some recently just good luck with Neville offensive linemen. But yeah, Lance Hurd, true freshman in the 2023 class, a 5-star, one of the best or most highly rated recruits in this 2023 class. We got to see some from him. He came in the Grambling second series. So the original starting 5 was the same. It's what it was, last week against Florida State. And then in the second series, when Lance Hurd came in, Emory Jones, who was playing right tackle and has been playing right tackle for this team for the last year, he moved to right guard. Lance Hurd moved into right tackle, and Miles Frazier, who has been playing right guard, was out. So you just shift everyone down one, and that moves Miles Frazier out. I am not going to act like I am an offensive line enthusiast. There are a lot of people that are. I can tell you when it's really good, and I can tell you when it's really bad. But I can't really get into the nitty gritty of hand placement and hip rotation and all that. I'm not going to claim to be an offensive line expert. But what I do feel confident in is, one, that right side needs some help, and it needs some help desperately. We even heard that during the Florida State game. I believe it was Holly Rowe that said, on the sidelines, the Florida State defenders were talking about how weak that right side was if you wanted to get penetration and you wanted to get pressure on the quarterback, just go to the right side. When I heard Holly say that, I legitimately wanted to throw up because I was like, you've got to be freaking kidding me. So I appreciate the move by the coaching staff to use the resources and the talent at their disposal to try and bolster up the right side and do it in a game where if it didn't go well, you could afford that. You could afford to experiment a little bit. So will this be a permanent rotation on the offensive line, or was that merely just Lance Hurd getting some experience as a young right tackle? This is what Brian Kelly had to say about Lance Hurd and what he saw from him on Saturday night.
We liked his presence in the lineup. He was He was assignment correct. He was physical at the point of contact, and we felt like, by and large, for a first time in a collegiate, football game, he handled the emotions of the game very well. So I think we're on track to kind of similarly do what we did in the last game with him in the next game as well. Miles will still start at guard, but there's going to be a rotation there.
So there will be a rotation. So just compare how Brian Kelly spoke about Lance Hurd there versus maybe a Caleb Jackson. And I'm not comparing the two. Look, Caleb Jackson is a young player and a stacked running back room. It's nothing on him and his ability, but you could hear the tone, the difference in the way that Brian Kelly was talking about Lance Hurd that made you believe and made me believe that, yeah, this is going to be a thing. Like Amy just said, that's going to be a rotation on the offensive line. I don't love that, to be completely honest with you. Offensive line is something that is just, you need chemistry, and it's not easy to build, and you can't build it overnight. And the offensive line needs to learn the quarterback, and the quarterback needs to learn the offensive line. That when you're constantly shaking things up, I think that's probably cause for concern, and it's cause for confusion for both the line and the quarterback. Like when we talk about the line, we don't talk about 5 individuals. We talk about one unit. So when you shake that unit up, well, that's confusing, and that could be a vulnerable spot for you. So I don't love the idea of shaking things up and not having a constant line, at least for now. But what I do like is Lance Hurd getting those reps, because I think that, what we saw from Lance Hurd on Saturday, which, to Brian Kelly's point, first game at the college level. It's a overwhelming environment. You're going up against a high level of competition, no matter who you're playing. So for him to be able to get those reps and maybe to become a more permanent fixture on the right side of the line, I think is a positive thing. So we'll see. We will see how that shakes out. Again, don't love the shakeup on the line, but do love the intention to gotta patch up some areas that didn't look great in week 1. So Denver Harris, Logan Diggs, Caleb Jackson, Lance Hurd, some newcomers that I think as far, for Denver Harris, if he can stay committed to the process, to use Brian Kelly's word. I think Logan Diggs Logan Diggs should be a continued fixture and starter on this team. Denver Harris, if he can stay committed, I think you'll start to see him trickle in more and more and more, and also Lance Hurd, as well as Brian Kelly said, getting in those offensive line rotations. But that's going to do it for me today. Thank you for making Locked In LSU your first listen every single day. A little bit of around the SEC. How the SEC slate last week and this upcoming week affects LSU and affects LSU's contention for the SEC West, plus your questions on a Mailbag Wednesday. All that coming up on tomorrow's edition of Locked On LSU.